Welcome to Around the ECHL. Tommy Daniels, very pleased to be joined tonight by two broadcasters. Well, I was going to say in the division, but not right now, as we're just Western Conference. The great Bob Rennison, who joins us from his home in Kansas City, and our buddy Zack Renyolds, who comes to us from Tulsa, and my broadcast partner of 10 seasons, the one and only, the great Maurice Fitzgerald. Well, boys, great. We could be here tonight to talk about what is going to be a big week for Allen after no hockey last week. Unfortunately, the games against Wichita were postponed. Zack, you've dealt with that this year. You know exactly what it's like. Let's talk about this, boys, because we're living in a different world here. Never did I think we would have games postponed for reasons, other than maybe a snowstorm or what have you, or, things that go wrong in the building, the ice bat or whatever. So we're living in a different world. How shocked are you that, at least to now, we've been able to get more games, through the channel there than I thought. I was worried, honestly, God, from the very beginning that we were going to be having issues every week. And, for the most part, we've done a pretty good job.
I think that really points to how serious the coaches and all the hockey ops people are taking everything as well, just because, it'd be easy to have the season going well and to let your guard down. And I think, a couple of early postponements made sure everyone realized that was a real possibility. And then now you look around and teams are doing a really good job making sure that they're keeping things safe and that the players are, away from everybody and doing their own thing. So I think it's great how well the league's done, and kind of maybe a model for other leagues that want to come back.
Bob, you've been a broadcaster for a long time. We'll go to Mo next, but I just want to start out here. You've been a broadcaster for a long, long time. Did you ever in your wildest dreams think you would see something like we're dealing with today?
Oh, never in a million years. Of course, they talk about the 1918 pandemic, which carried into 1919 when the Stanley Cup Finals did not finish. The Seattle Metropolitans and the Montreal Canadiens, I've read about that, but never thought I'd see anything like this. But I think at least from the Mavericks standpoint, things are going well. That first game of the season, the Mavericks were short a few players, went to Indy, ended up losing in a shootout, but somehow they were able to play as they were shorthanded, not as far as power plays go, but shorthanded on the ice. And ever since that time, well, they've played with a full complement of players, and it's just one of those things that, sure, it could all change at a moment's notice, but players have been going in and out, and just something that we have to be thankful for here in Independence at this time. And hopefully that's the way it will be for the 13 and soon to be 14 teams in the league after Fort Wayne joins this season, as they will be playing an abbreviated schedule. So let's hope that that is the case, and teams continue to do what they must do to avoid COVID and stay in safe situations.
Well, aside from COVID, you also have to now take into effect the AHL starting up again. The American League, now they're going to be pulling players back. The Americans just lost 3 players to 4 actually now to the American League. You guys are going to go through the same thing. So you get a double whammy when it comes to COVID potential, and then also the American League pulling players away. How do you see that changing the dynamics of both of your teams?
Right now, the Kansas City Mavericks have lost just 2 players to the AHL, Zach Osborne and a goaltender, Sean Bonner. And although Bonner is a good goaltender, well, the Mavericks have had several goaltenders between the pipes at this point in the season. Taron Kozin has been one. 2 former Allen Americans, Joel Rumpel and Andrew Shortridge. As Bonner, as I mentioned, has been called up, and there have been a couple of others who have been between the pipes for the Mavericks. So maybe if there's any one position where it's been a situation where players being called up, goaltender, although not all goaltenders play the same way as far as numbers goes, that's something that the Mavericks have had an advantage with because they've just had so many come through camp.
Zack, what's one of the toughest things you find about doing your job this year? I think for me, here we are, we're already the 18th day or the 19th day of December as this show was recorded on the 18th. But, there's still guys in the room that I've never had a one-on-one conversation with. And that's the biggest challenge. I mean, every year, usually by the first month of the year, everybody in the team, you know them very well from the bus trips, but not being able to take bus trips this year, how much of a challenge is it for you to do your day-to-day job?
Yeah, it's tough because I mean, there's some guys I haven't even seen yet without a mask on. You know what I mean? And there's so many guys that you only see them in a mask. You don't really see their facial expressions, and you see them from a distance, and that's definitely been something that's been odd. But at the same time, there's other things that are different that have been going back and forth for some guys. I know some with like remote broadcasting, getting used to that. Luckily, I've had some pretty good luck with it, but it's definitely something different to call a game from somewhere else on a monitor versus being there live and doing it there. But yeah, I would say probably the same thing with the players and just not doing pregame interviews the same way. All the stuff that you maybe even take for granted a little bit on a regular game day that just change.
Same here.
Oh, go ahead, Bob.
Same here as far as getting to know the players. Tommy, you hit the nail on the head when you talked about getting to know the players. And by this point in the season, even though we're at January 18th, that would be like near the first part of December in a normal situation. But yeah, I've gotten it down, a lot of information about the players, where they've played before, what their hobbies are, family members, favorite moments in hockey. But this season began with only 5 players who had played for the Mavericks before. One, Zach Osborne, one of the players who has been called up. Another joined the team late in the season, Marcus Crawford. So in essence, there are just 3 players that I really know from past seasons with the Kansas City Mavericks. And so it's like moving into a room where you see a bunch of people, but you really don't know any of them.
Now, what are some of the advantages that you guys have found with this COVID, with all the social distancing and stuff like that? There have been some positives as well to come out of it, as far as not having to travel on the bus, things like that with the team. I know it's a little bit more difficult for you guys. I know Zach had mentioned it about the remote setups, but talk about some of the other advantages that you found, maybe spending more time at home, things like that, being you don't have to be on the road all year.
I think my dog's happy with it for sure that that I'm home a bit more. So that's nice. And there's a couple of nice things about, an away broadcast that might not have in a regular season. You can print your notes when you want to print your notes, and you can take a look at them at kind of your own pace. You don't have to be going down to the building to get your stat packs. And you can cook a pregame meal to have beforehand. You don't have to rely on what's around you and close. You can decide what you want to eat before a game, and sometimes that can kind of be nice as well. But there is no substitute for going on the road. It's so great, but at the same time, the league's done a really good job of allowing us to still continue to call games and having a home and an away broadcast for every team.
Bob, you guys had a game last night in Utah. We'll be seeing them coming up at the end of the month. I know it's not been the great start that you probably hoped for this year in Kansas City, but talk about your team to date. Kind of give us an update on maybe the early season struggles and where you see the team now.
Well, I see the team moving up. They just added 4 new players recently, not counting goaltenders. Cameron Nault is one of them. Also, Derek Angeli and Boston Lear joined the team, and Connor Doherty. Their first games were on Friday night in Utah, and the team didn't look so well in the third period. Then it was 3-2 Grizzlies after 2, and then the Grizzlies scored 2 more in the third period, and they went ahead and won that. But the following game, Saturday night, these 4 players who had just joined the team, it's one of the deals where they just all of a sudden came together. And I actually talked with Tad O'Had about that on the pregame show. I do a lot of high school football broadcasts, and football coaches say the biggest improvement is between week 1 and week 2. And I said to Tad, well, it's not really the same in hockey because you usually don't have a week off. But when you take these 4 players, week 1 or game 1 and game 2 were just a day apart, but there is a noticeable difference. And then the night that this is being recorded, which was last night, the Mavericks looked very good, scoring 4 goals in period number 1 and held on for a 5-2 victory after one of the newcomers, Luke Bafia, scored into the empty net in the closing minutes of the game. But these 4 new players who just joined the Mavericks seem to kick the Mavericks into high gear. Maybe it's a situation where some of the guys that have been with the team looked around and said to themselves, whoa, if I don't get moving, I'm not going to be with this team very long. I don't know if that's the case because, once again, we don't get to visit with them as often as we would during non-COVID times. But teams really picked up, and the Grizzlies were 4-0 at home when the Mavericks got there, and the Mavericks just handed them a couple of losses. 2 out of the 3 games the Mavericks won in Utah against the Grizzlies. So, of course, Mavericks fans hoping that is a sign that things are going to start moving forward. That's not always the case, though, but it's a good start.
Same for you, Zach. How's Tulsa looking? I know there's a 3-way tie right now for second, and Utah was stopped by the Mavs, so that kind of helps you guys out a little bit, but it's a tight race so far early in the season.
Yeah, I mean, the team was able to string together 5 wins at one point this year, just before going to Rapid City this weekend. Actually, 5th win was this past Friday. But a tight division race as always, it seems, right? And now it's, with the West Conference, you had a couple of teams you don't see as often. But the team did drop 2 straight in Rapid City. Both games, could have gone either way. And it's one of those things, I think, that we have so many new players this year as well, right? We started with 5 returners. We picked up Brent Gates, who played for us last season as well. But I mean, with that, I think it's taken a while for some guys to gel, but it's kind of worked out, and really good goaltending for Rapid City. Ended up winning those 2 games, but easily team could be on a 7-game win streak, but have a really, really difficult set of games coming up here. 3 games against Indy and a game against Allen all in 1 week. So be interesting to see. Roman Durney was goaltender of the week last week. So we'll see if he can, kind of get back into that form and pick up some dominant play like he had.
This is Around the ECHL. We have the voice of the longtime voice of the Kansas City Mavericks, Bob Rennison. Zack Renyolds is still a young one. He's been around for a couple of years. You look at that baby face there in Tulsa, but a great young broadcaster. And my broadcast partner for the last 10 years is Maurice Fitzgerald. All right, boys, I want to talk playoffs here. Nobody really knows what the playoff picture is going to look like this year in the ECHL. Do you guys have any ideas? If you were in charge of putting together a playoff, format, tournament, what have you, for this year, how would you design it, and how many teams would be involved?
I think perhaps the best way to go, and of course, things with the COVID situation change almost daily. So there could be so many scenarios that are looked at now that won't be effective once the season comes to an end. But right now, you talked about the teams being in 2 conferences, maybe just having 8 teams in the playoffs, depending on how the situation is. And if you have a 7-game series, would that possibly require having 3 games on the road and 4 games at home for the higher seed due to travel limitations? We'll have to find out, but perhaps it may be a situation where there will be 2 7-team conferences, just having 4 teams out of each conference in the playoffs. And if things get bad, which worse than they are, which we certainly hope does not happen, could it go down to the top 2 in each conference playing? It's just a roll of the dice, and we have to wait and see how things look at whatever point this season comes to an end.
Zach, would you like to see a tournament? I know North American Hockey League, when they get to their finals, they move to Minnesota and they do a little tournament type of thing. How do you think, not permanently, but just a 1 year, let's give it a try?
That's not a bad idea. Sean Watching, our VP of tickets, and I were talking about this the other day, about potentially you could do it with 3 teams coming out of each conference, and the top seed gets a bye, and it's basically a play-in. And then you have the conference finals, and then you have the finals. So you can cut down on how many games you have to play. I mean, the play-in could be a 3-game or 5-game series, and then you could have a pair of 7-game series after that. I like the idea of a tournament too, putting everybody in the same spot. That way you cut back on the travel, and then you're able to also maybe limit the amount of games that are played. Which if you teams don't have, if you have a kind of neutral location for the bubble, and depending on the fan situation, maybe that's what you want, is a kind of tournament style, one spot, few games. Or have it where you just kind of have a play-in. Either way, right? You have 14 teams, which makes it a bit awkward because you can't just go even from either side and make it a half. So if you put 8 teams in, that's a lot of teams getting in. But if you put 6, there's going to be some really good teams that miss out too.
Interesting situation that you brought up there, Zach and Tommy. If it is put in a central location, of course, what drives the teams in this league are ticket sales. And if you decide well in advance, what happens if the city that is decided upon, their team doesn't make the postseason? And so it'll be a bunch of people who won't have a team to cheer for in that city. What's the situation there?
Well, so I was going to say, I like the idea of a tournament, but then you're also cutting into revenue for the teams, which is vital at this level. And you want to make sure that all the fans can see their team at home as well as on the road. So I kind of lean more towards the 4 teams each, just because you'll get the traditional playoff format in that way. It'll be a little more condensed, but it'll be a standard format. Now, of course, we all have to wait and see how things go, because hopefully there won't be any further lockdowns that will affect any teams, because the last thing you want to do is have any team that can't have fans in the arena, and that could cause them to miss out on the playoffs. So it's going to be a tough situation, and it's going to probably be an ever evolving one, but I have full confidence in the ECHL that they'll handle it correctly.
And boys too, the announcement of expansion and 2 teams coming in, one in Quebec and the other one in Iowa. First of all, we'll start with you, Mo, and then kind of work our way around the table, Zach, and then down to Bob. Thoughts on the new 2 cities coming in, and also second part of that is, if you were adding maybe a couple other expansion cities down the road, who do you think would be good spots for our league?
Well, I think if you're going to have, I think it's great to see the expansion. We definitely want to see expansion. The perfect goal would be to have an American League team for every NHL team and an ECHL team for every AHL team. As far as expansion, I'd like to see something up maybe in the Spokane area, because you've got the Kraken now that are going to be coming in. So maybe having a close by team would be good. And then that also would be a good close by team for Boise. So that would make things a little easier for them, as well as Rapid. So that way those teams would get a little bit of a cut on their travel and be able to have some closer opponents.
I think it's always great to see the league expanding. I'm sure we'll get to see the team in Coralville or Iowa City, however you want to say it, a decent amount locationally. I'm sure Kansas City will as well geographically. And always good to expand the league more into Canada, especially in Quebec, and add a little bit of a different flavor to the league. As far as markets, I would like to see expand. Selfishly, Oklahoma City would be great to see for us. Our fans enjoyed a really good rivalry back in the old CHL with Oklahoma City and in some other leagues as well. And it'd be great for us. Now, I don't know if I could really see it happening, but that would be fantastic. And then maybe somewhere like Knoxville, or places that have had some teams, maybe another team in Kentucky, Louisville. I know it's been there before. They've also had AHL hockey, but somewhere that's just maybe a little different that the league's gone into before, but hasn't been near recently.
As far as looking around the league at expansion or the teams that are coming in, hey, I hope that we get to travel again once these 2 new cities are in the league. I broadcast indoor soccer in Verdun, Quebec one time, and it was just absolutely amazing. And Toby LaFrance, who played for the Mavericks their first 2 seasons, sent me a message when the city in Quebec was added, and he said, hey, looking forward to watching you, visiting with you when you come here to visit. And I have a very personal reason for wanting to go to Coralville, Iowa. My daughter lives about 5 minutes away from the building there, and I get to see her and my son-in-law, and something that I have that Tommy Daniels has too, a grandson named Jack. My grandson named Jack lives in Coralville or in Iowa City. So looking forward to that. As far as expansion is concerned, I'd like to see more teams your way, Zach, and your way, Tommy, as well. You mentioned Oklahoma City, and I have no idea about the Norrick Arena, if that could hold hockey once again, but that would be outstanding, having a Tulsa versus Oklahoma City rivalry, and Oklahoma City and Wichita were just huge rivals. I would also like to see one an hour and a half from Independence. Love to see Topeka have a team again, although the last couple of years that they were in junior hockey, they struggled quite a bit, but maybe if it's pro hockey, people would be interested in that. I'd also love to see teams in plays near you, Tommy, at the, I don't know what the situation would be with the Dickies Arena in Fort Worth. San Antonio just lost their AHL team. Maybe that would be a city that would be worth exploring.
Yeah, I agree, Bob. And also add to that list, Houston. Houston has been without a franchise since the American Hockey League team left. And we know that why that happened. The Rockets owner at the time didn't want him in the building and just kept raising the rent, unfortunately, until he moved him on out of town. But you know what? There's an area down in Houston, Conroe, the Woodlands, great area. Put a venue the size of the Allen Event Center, your arena there in Independence, Bob. And I think definitely people in Houston, I mean, it's the second biggest market in Texas, right behind, Dallas. It deserves a hockey team. I to be honest, I thought the NHL would have been in there by now, but, don't know if that's going to happen. But somebody needs to jump on that, whether it's the American Hockey League with the Texas Stars. And unfortunately, like you mentioned, they lost to San Antonio. Houston definitely needs a team. And I agree with you. I want Fort Worth back. That was the greatest thing in the world. 45-minute drive across town. We could go in there. We could beat the doors off the little barn there in North Richland Hills and be back home and in your bed by 11:15 that night. So that was pretty incredible. I miss those days. All right, last thing,
Tommy,
boys. Go ahead, Bob.
What you talk about Houston, that city is so big.
Yeah.
You talked about Conroe, and then there's cities on the other end of town, like League City, Texas. It would be like having two cities, because it would be kind of like what you had with Fort Worth, because it takes a couple of hours to get from one to the other. They wouldn't be stealing fans from the other end of town.
Yeah, great point. And I think that, I talked to Dwayne Lewis about that, back when we were in the Central League. And, I talked to Brian before he left, the ECHL. Got to get a team down there in Houston. I think it's going to happen eventually. It's just too big of a market. Somebody's going to go in there and, like I said, build, maybe a smaller arena and put a minor league team in there. Then we'll see. And who knows? I mean, maybe that drives an NHL team to see how much the demand is for hockey. I just can't imagine a city the size of Houston. At one time, there was a lot of talk. I think Bob might remember this several years ago. They were talking about moving the Edmonton Oilers to Houston. And I thought, how perfect would that be? The return of the Houston Oilers, different sport. But anyway, last Houston, question for you, and then we'll let you go, because I know we've kept you on here a long time tonight. This today was a weird day for us. We lost both of our goaltenders in one day. Zach Sawchenko gets, recalled by San Jose. CJ Mott has earned a call up. He's played very, very well. He's won his last 3 starts. He goes to Bridgeport. Different year. And I give Steve Martinson credit. He let his guys go, knowing that, yes, there are players out there, but is this what we're going to see all year? Players bouncing in and out. And if a guy can't perform because there's so many other players out there that don't have jobs, because a lot of European leagues didn't play. And, are we going to see this all year long, where it's a revolving door with people in and out?
I think you'll see it with signing new players a lot. I mean, we've already done it where, there's guys that are sitting at home and they are really fantastic players, and maybe it didn't work out earlier in the summer when they were being recruited, whether it be for salary cap reasons or, a multitude of other reasons, right? And I think that you'll see guys coming left, right, and center. I mean, it seems like every single team in the league's picked somebody up from Kalamazoo last season, and I'm sure that'll just continue as the year goes on. Glad to see Zach Chachenko get a call up, as he was dominant against us, and he certainly deserves it. He was fantastic, but for us, we really haven't had much movement with the affiliate, and I wonder how much the taxi squad at the NHL level will help with that windfall coming down, because they're not going to have to pull guys up constantly from the AHL to the NHL by being able to carry that taxi squad. But at the same time, it just takes one or two things to happen, and you could have a chain of reaction between the three levels, where you have 11 transactions in a day because of a couple of things. So hopefully we don't see too much of that, but I think you're right. I think we'll see lots of roster movement as the year goes by.
I agree with Zach that particularly with the reason either Zach or Tommy, one of you mentioned that with fewer teams, that means there's a lot of competition for jobs with teams. Sometimes someone may be good at a certain aspect of their game, but a team needs someone else. So boom, one guy's gone and another one is in, and you just might see a revolving door throughout the campaign. Perhaps not quite as much as the Brampton Beasts saw in their second year of the ECHL, when they had 70 players on their roster throughout that. But don't be surprised if teams have up to 40 players or so on their roster this year.
Mo, you got the last word of the night.
Yeah, I think with that, we talked about this earlier in another Around the ECHL show about how critical goaltenders are. And there's going to be a lot of them out there because there's a lot of teams not playing. But there's going to be these call-ups. There's going to be a lot of movement. And then you have the COVID issues. How many goaltenders are going to be able to get jobs? And then how many goaltenders are going to, or heroes are going to come out of this, that come into the position that, maybe everybody kind of looked at the guy, says, hey, maybe he's just an SPHL goaltender or something like that. And then he turns out, no, he just rocks the house and he ends up being a hero. And then at the same time, what do you do with the guy like that when the affiliate sends back down the player for further play, like a Sachenko or whatever? So it's going to be a really hard thing to juggle. But the good thing is there are enough players out there to backfill any empty positions that come into our team's roster this year in this weird situation that we're in this season.
Well, unfortunately, Zach and Bob, I won't get to see you guys this weekend. That's the one thing I really miss is joining and having that pregame conversation, before the game. And I've done that for, now this is year 12 with Bob, in Kansas City, and, Zach with you over the last few years. And, I miss that. That's the part of the broadcast. I hope it comes back. And I think that, let's just hope that nobody ever decides that this is the way to go to the future, because it's not. You got to know your players. You got to know your fellow broadcasters. You really can't get the feel of the game unless you're in the arena, and you can smell the nachos and you can, hear the fans cheering, Allen sucks or whatever. I mean, that's the part of, the broadcast I love the most. Let's just call it a bad year. We'll get through this all. Bob, go Bills.
Oh, no.
I knew I was going to get that in there, Bob.
Yeah. Remember what I said to you on the phone today? Every 27 years, the Chiefs and the Bills meet in a game that will determine who goes to the Super Bowl. It happened in '66, 27 years later in 1993, and now 27 years later, it's happening again. So it won't happen again, the Chiefs and the Bills, in the AFC Championship game until 2047.
27, a good number. That's how many minutes it took us to get this broadcast on the air tonight.
That was just
thank
the
you
start.
for joining us. Yeah, sometimes the show before the show, and it was radio, in this case, Zoom Gold. Yeah. Boys, have a great rest of your week. Good luck, and we'll see you both this weekend.
You have a great week too, Tommy and Zach and Maurice.
Yeah, thanks for having us, and it's always good to catch up since we can't see each other in person. So good to see you guys.
This was fun, boys. Thank you.
It was.